What was the worst meal that you ate out of politeness? When I was in 8th grade I slept over at a friend's house one night. We were playing games upstairs and hanging out, getting hungry, when we hear her mom call us down for dinner. Enchiladas, my favorite. As I walk down the stairs I get a very strong whiff of what smells like cat pee. I just thought it was the stairs, but as we got closer to the kitchen the smell kept getting stronger and I was getting more nervous with each step. Sitting down at the table confirmed my worst fear. The enchiladas smelled so strongly of cat pee. I don't know why but they did. The whole family remarks how good it smells and freaking digs in and I just kinda sat there, mumbled something about how I wasn't too hungry and pushed it around my plate as best I could. I went home the next day starving. Alternatively, when I was young my mom made some crock pot chicken dish. Now, she's usually an amazing cook, but this time something went horribly wrong. My sister and I sit down and start eating, realize that it's gross, feel horribly for not liking it, so we both would take teeny bites and wash it down with soda, like a pill. So my mom finally sits down and takes one bite and immediately spits it out. She looked over at us and saw our faces and was just like, "Get in the car, we're going to Del Taco." The enchiladas smelled like that because the corn tortillas may have been expired. I have heard that rotting corn products tend to smell like cat urine ammonia. I went over to her friend's and she offered to cook. She proudly poured at least half a cup on vegetable oil into a pan before dumping in leftover casserole. She also served hot dogs as thick as sausages, the dollar store brand. That was a hard one to choke down. I had to eat this mystery soup that my wife's aunt made once. I swear, it looked like it was made in a witch's cauldron. My father-in-law's secret ultimate recipe. 1 thick slice of raw onion. Place a thick slice of tomato on top of the onion. Add a pork chop, seared until overcooked or else you die apparently, that has been coated in brown sugar. Add, top with a mound of overcooked white rice and cover with a can of cream of mushroom soup. Concentrate, no water or milk added. Cook in oven at 450 for about an hour. Serve to me, son-in-law, and await praise for culinary genius. I threw up 2 times that I can remember. Once while eating, choked it back down, and once while trying to drive home. My Phil still swears it is his greatest inventions and could be in fancy restaurants. Not exactly a meal. Stinky tofu. Some colleagues in China showed me around Shanghai on a Saturday when I was there for a business trip. They wanted me to try some. One of them ate it too and seemed to enjoy it. I had the taste of fermented garbage in mouth for hours. OMG, stinky tofu is delicious, but it's absolutely an acquired taste. It smells literally like garbage but a delicious type of garbage. New relationship and she wanted to make me a home cooked meal. I saw her using the knife she just used on the raw chicken to cut up the salad immediately after. I thought the smart move was to keep quiet about it and just be appreciative. I rolled the dice and ate. I lost the roll later that day. Not me, but my son-in-law. My grandmother, we're white. This will be important later. Makes this wild layer dip with curried cream cheese, chutney, smoked almonds, bacon, and green onions. You scoop it up with fritters, getting some of all of the layers in your scoop. It really sounds bizarre but is absolutely delicious. As long as you like curry. At family events she gets really worked up over did you try my dip? I made dip. I'm not too old to contribute, 90 years old with a chip on her shoulder. I've seen my future. I can't wait. Anyway, at Thanksgiving one year she notices my son-in-law, one who is, as you may have guessed, Mexican, had not eaten any of the aforementioned dip as he does not like curry. So she grabs a cracker, not a Frito, it's got to be Fritos, and heaps it with a giant scoop that somehow manages to bypass all the other ingredients and is nothing other than a ginormous pile of cream cheese mixed with curry. Shrieks, your people like spicy food, don't they? And shoves the cracker into his mouth. He stands there, cheeks puffed out, chewing as quickly as possible so he could swallow it and rid his mouth of it as quickly as possible, while Nana stands there, beaming, waiting for him to say how much he likes it. He finally is able to choke out, "Oh yeah, that's really good, one is a keeper." A few years ago I was eating dinner that a girl I was seeing made me. It was mutton, and in addition to not being very good, she had already given me a hard time for not eating manly enough. so I ended up just spitting pieces of meat into napkins when she wasn't looking, and putting them in my pockets. By the end of the meal my pockets were crammed full of half-chewed meat. Nice try, Jerry. Lived with someone when I was a teen who had more than 20 cats. I know I saw a cat pee in a pan and I saw the lady making dinner with said pan later on. Not sure if she washed the pan. Every painful bite as she watched. Ugh. Cringe. Trust me, if it had cat pee in it, you would have tasted it. Probably before you even put any of the food in your mouth, to be honest. I lived in China one summer teaching English as a part of a summer college program. One night, we had dinner with an education department and they seriously brought us fish that looked like they had just pulled it out of the fish tank and put it on the plate. It would have been considered very rude if I didn't eat what they gave me. I was picking fish scales out of my teeth for days. Buying live fish is huge in Southeast Asia. It's guaranteed quality, I guess. In some of the fancier places in Singapore and Hong Kong, a plate of something similar to what you're describing where you literally pick the fish you want can go for $130. I am lactose intolerant. GF at the time decided to make me some lactose-free ice cream. She used milk instead of cream. She thought cream contained lactose and milk didn't. She tried so hard I went for it. She was a special girl. Thinking to myself, I don't think chicken is normally this pink. I don't want to upset the cook. She's a Bosnian refugee. Throwing up during a college exam the next day was not worth a Bosnian refugee's feelings. Once my mother decided to rage cook because she was upset, and we ended up with a bowl of horrible overcooked brown ramen. I can't appropriately describe it with words, so hopefully your minds will fill in the rest. Everybody else stood up before they were done, including her, but I ate it to the end. She kind of told me halfway through to stop eating it and repented though, so I guess it was more of revenge eating. I had intense stomach aches for the rest of the week, and my bowel movements didn't go down for another month. It wasn't worth it. One time my friend's mum made a cheesecake, but instead of putting whatever the frick is in actual cheesecake, she sprinkled mozzarella, or something like that on regular sponge cake. I was invited by an upstairs neighbor of an apartment building I had just moved into. He seemed nice. The building was full of studios, so I figured it would be good to know somebody in case I needed help or whatever. The meal consisted of salad made of mint leaves, just the mint leaves, like chewing mint leaves as lettuce, with just olive oil drizzled over it, and whole salted peanuts on top. I figured the fish couldn't be that much worse. Horrifyingly dried, baked fish of indeterminate species, with some sort of very watery bean soup, boiled beans on the side that tasted like tea. No other flavoring. Dessert was a mandarin orange peeled and pulled apart sloppily by him right in front of me. Let me peel my own orange. Goddamn. He arranged the mangled orange segments on a plate. I stayed out of politeness and then escaped. Proceeded to avoid him the entire year I lived there. I remember my mom making a casserole, which is pretty hard to frick up, but she did it. I can't remember the wrong ingredient she put in, but it was like some spice that made it taste weird. And then she burnt it to where it was almost blackened around the edges. I remember eating it and even asking if I could have a little more just to make her feel better, and I'll never forget her saying, "It's okay. I know it's not good. You don't have to eat more." She was a single mom and worked really hard, and I just remember our first year on our own the cat ruined dinner and she tried to hide and cry about it, which only made me cry to see my mom suffering. I never wanted her to think I wasn't appreciative of what she could give me. Chicken feet. When I was in elementary school, my good friend was Chinese and his family made a lot of traditional foods. So one night I was over there and had chicken feet, and not wanting to be impolite, even though I thought it tastes terrible, I said, "Oh man, this is so good." Fast forward to a year after we graduated college. We were both back in town and decided to meet up at his family's house for dinner. His mom made a special meal of chicken feet because she remembered how much I liked them. Once again I lied and said they were delicious. They were not. Still terrible. TLDR. Ate chicken feet twice 14 years apart because my mom raised me to be too polite to say they were gross. A fresh made tortilla. I grew up poor, in a poor neighborhood. My neighbors were about 20 Mexicans and a 2BR. They all picked tomatoes for a living. I played with the two kids. We ran around the neighborhood every day after school. Once, I was with them when the boy came up to me with something very special. Apparently tortillas from scratch had just been made. My two friends were beyond excited. I was bestowed with my very own, very special tortilla. I ate mine rolled up, like the other kids. It was the driest thing ever. As they went on and on about how delicious it was, I was biting my tongue to get more saliva so I wouldn't choke. At 9 years old and I was an unforgiving picky eater. I would go hungry without dinner if an adult ever called my bluff. I would rather go hungry, but I ate that tortilla, a food I'd never had before, which dried my mouth and really confused my taste buds, and no adult made me. This is honestly the least horrifying thing on this topic. LOL. I had finished my last shift working at a funeral home, and that day we'd brought in a body that had been discovered about 8 days after death. I washed up, collected my last paycheck, and drove to my fiancee's mom's house for dinner. She had decided to cook pork chops, and had covered them in about an inch of some stinky cheese she'd picked up that day at the gourmet grocery store. I walked in the house and immediately turned around and ran back to my car. The cheese and pork mix smelled almost perfectly like the body I'd retrieved that afternoon. I was having some issues with her. I was going to marry her oldest and most favorite child, so I forced my boss back in that house, ate the freaking corpsey meal, told her it was delicious, and threw up when I got home. Thank God the spouse was recently diagnosed as lactose intolerant, so no more cheese at the Mills house. TLDR, it involves a corpse, cheese and pork. Go read it, it's not that long. My wife wanted a pasta maker for years. One year she gets two for Christmas. I'm all fired up for some fresh homemade pasta. She makes mushroom ravioli. She makes the ravioli in this really great smelling brown butter sauce and I take my first bite and it's just like a mouthful of sand. She takes a bite and starts to cry. I finish the plate, but decline seconds. We still laugh about it. My wife and I went to one of her co-workers' homes for dinner. The place was filthy and reeked of two ferrets they kept in the living room. The smell was choking. After being there an hour, our brilliant hostess started dinner. She poured a bag of frozen meatballs into a crock pot with barbecue sauce. I told her it would take 3 or 4 hours to cook, so she asked me to cook them in a pan instead. After I cooked them, she served them on paper plates. No drinks, nothing else, just meatballs served with a heaping side of pea smell. Awful. Not a meal, but when I was younger I had a friend whose family was a little less well off than most. Well, one afternoon I went around to his house. We were mucking about on the trampoline and he asked me if I wanted a snack. Of course. I thought perhaps some delicious mouse traps were in the works. Cheese on toast with Marmite, or at the least, a sandwich. We went into his kitchen and he grabbed a bottle of chocolate sauce from the cupboard, like the crap you put on ice cream. He asked me to stick out my hand and proceeded to squirt a massive dollop of sauce into my outstretched palm. He then followed suit and began licking it off, like a bear. I've never been more baffled, and believe me when I say that store brand chocolate sauce eating off skin is not food for a growing boy. Visited my grandma a few years ago and had her breakfast special, chipped beef on toast. For anybody who isn't familiar with it, it's like the Midwestern version of biscuits and gravy. It's a white gravy with chunks of salty dried beef served over toasted white bread. It isn't the best dish in the world, but grandpa likes it. We sat down to eat breakfast and noticed the gravy was much thinner than usual. Grandma is over 80 with Parkinson's, so nobody would dare say anything. We start eating the breakfast and it tastes disgustingly sweet. Eventually she realized something was wrong too. She accidentally switched her flour and powdered sugar containers. Almost nobody finished the meal, except my uncle, who was a real champ and went back for seconds. That was the day he became the favorite-in-law. Fish with a ton of bones, and salad that looked and tasted like grass cuttings. Even the coffee afterward sucked. Decaf with sweet and low and goat's milk. It was dinner at the boss's house though, so I grinded through it. I once ate 2 hot dogs at my friend's house. There was something quite wrong with them and he was really poor, so I did the only thing I could think of. I faked a bout of diarrhea in such a way that I'd stuff about half a hot dog in my mouth, run to the bathroom, spit it out in the toilet, and then flush it down. I did it 3 or 4 times. I still feel bad, but I'm sure I would have gotten sick. My mom nearly married a general who was Norwegian American. He made us a traditional meal with fiskebolen, fish balls, canned potato, and lingonberries, SP0. The fish balls, imagine a gelatinous fish cured in lye and brine that someone has thoughtfully formed in little balls for you to eat. The canned potatoes would have been hideous on their own, but compared to the fiskebolen weren't as vile as they might be. The lingonberries were the only decent thing. We were pretty little and kept throwing pitiful looks at our mom, who kept giving us the be polite look. Ghastly, nice guy, but just as well she dodged that bullet. XGF came from an extremely poor family. She was very smart, so she got out and became moderately successful. She was on good terms with her family, so we went there for dinner. Appetizers. Bread and butter. Not bad, right? Wrong. The bread was served with missing pieces. I didn't say anything. I'm not very confrontational, even in harmless situations like this. But I must have appeared concerned. Oh, haha. Yeah, the bread was a bit past the BS fresh date, so we just cut out the weird colored parts, says her mother. BTW, they were nice enough. Just gross. Okay. Got served mold bread. Cool. Dinner. 99-cent deli meat and oatmeal oats. Not even fricking oatmeal. Just the oats. What the frick? Dessert. Seriously, the mom brought out a plate of chocolate syrup. Guess what was surrounding the syrup? The moldy fricking bread. I was in awe. I loved her, so I ate all of that crap and acted like nothing was amiss. But I cannot believe one bit. We were drinking fancy liquor, like expensive crap. But this meal, I can't believe they'd think it is acceptable to torture your guests like that. Although I have worked at a liquor store in Detroit and most people come in with food stamps, buy their kids the cheapest groceries, haggle for 50 cents, then buy the most expensive liquors we have. I was living with a host family in Ireland on a farm for the profoundly disabled. The family was made of the core family, disabled residents and volunteers, and we all ate a cooked lunch together every day. The dish was partially burned mustard and lentil soup made by one of our incredibly bitchy German volunteers. It was the slightly lumpy, pasty consistency of crap. Even the hippie dad had a few spoonfuls before pushing his plate away. We all tried to eat it because we didn't want to hurt the BS feelings. Also, we were slightly afraid of what she would make us eat when it was her turn to cook again. Eventually everyone gave up and we had toast and crackers for lunch. It is still the most revolting thing I have ever tasted. While living in Missoula, MT, environmental activist friends of ours invited us to dinner at their new place. We went over and they showed us around, and while one of them finished up cooking in the kitchen, dinner was served. We hungrily gathered around the table and took our seats. We put down our beers and dug right into the beef stroganoff and side of vegetables. A couple of bites in, I'm noticing something a bit, let's say, off about the food. I say to my hosts, thanks for the awesome meal. One of them replies, you're welcome, but it was free. We dumpster dove for every item on our plates. Pretty unbelievable. Ha, I gagged. As I looked back down to my plate, I realized that every single ingredient was semi-rotten and obtained from the mess of a dumpster. Even just the smell of the white sauce sliming its way across the turned beef stroganoff made me feel sweaty and dizzy with nausea. My boyfriend shot me a sickened glance of heck, and we both just moved things around while choking down the most soupy mix of semi-putrid food I've ever eaten. Man, not me but my husband, God bless that man. I once attempted to make Chinese food and that crap was nasty. He ate it, never complained, asked for more, never spoke of it again. I love him. Talk about a keeper. My co-worker's authentic Mexican burrito. The American in me has brutally tainted my taste buds against the original style. Now all I crave on a burrito is too much meat and sour cream and cheese and etc. That stuff tasted like cardboard mixed with tortillas with some 18-week-old refried beans. I ate that crap though. Now he calls me by my name. Lesson learned. Tuna cake. I'm not talking about something like crab cake. I mean yellow cake. No sugar or sweetness. Mayonnaise as frosting. And tuna within the layers and between the yellow cakes. My girlfriend and I now use the phrase on a scale of 1 to tuna cake. How awful does XYZ sound? My mom is a terrible cook and I have quite a few examples. The worst was the omelette she made for breakfast one day. Instead of putting fresh veggies or whatever in it, she dumped in the leftover salad from the previous night's dinner, lettuce, sliced almonds, goat cheese, and beets, scrambled all together with eggs. Let me start by saying I freaking love Thanksgiving turkey. My family looks for reasons to grill a bird, so when I meet this cute girl, she said she hated turkey with a passion. I could not understand why. That was until I was invited to their Thanksgiving dinner. Her mom oven roasted this poor turkey. Now normally I would hesitate on an oven roasted turkey because it can dry out easy. What I can say is I still was hopeful and did not want her family to hate me. I knew something was wrong. My turkey senses were tingling as I was watching her saw off the meat of this gas chamber turkey. What could best be described as turkey dust was collecting on the carving plate. I hesitantly grabbed a fair chunk of dark meat, knowing it's normally a bit juicier. I also even went one step further. I covered it in gravy. I thought I was ready, but I was not. As I started to chew my first bite, I could feel the turkey suckling up the saliva in my mouth like a vacuum. I was desperate, so I took a sip of water to little avail. But I could now chew it a little more. I had to repeat the process of taking 2 or 3 drinks of water per bite of turkey. I would say we have all experienced dry turkey. Normally if there is some flavor it's not so bad, but it was also bland. And since the skin more or less resembled potato chips, I had to get creative with downing the rest by means of mixing it with every side. The effect was disappointment in every bite for the entire meal, but I finished the piece. I said thank you for the meal and silently said a prayer for the bird, and I'm not even religious, but I felt if there was a God he should have mercy on this meal. Later, as I'm driving with my girlfriend home, she said she watched something change in my eyes that day out of despair. I could not find it in me to argue with that statement. I eat literally everything, so this doesn't apply to me. But once my boyfriend ate lasagna with cinnamon and sugar in it because the lady who made it was letting his family stay with them and they didn't want to be rude. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.